there's a brutal truth about attraction. One that most men spend their entire lives avoiding. Not because it's hidden, but because it's too powerful to handle. While they chase validation, while they memorize lines, fake smiles, buy things they don't need to impress women who barely notice them, they miss it. The one truth that 95.7% of women are already wired to respond to, if only he knew how to activate it. It's not about looks, not about charm, not even about confidence. It's about something deeper, something primal, something that can't be faked. Once you understand this, once you embody it, you'll notice a shift. They'll start looking at you differently, leaning closer, feeling something they can't name, but crave like oxygen. Because what draws them in isn't your face, your words, or your wallet. It's the invisible force you carry when you walk into a room. There are 4 points you must understand about what truly makes a man irresistible. And every point is extremely important to understand, especially the last one, because that's the one she never admits out loud, but always reacts to. So now the question is, are you ready to stop chasing and start radiating? Let's begin. Number 1, the man who teases her and drives her wild. He never chases. He never begs. He doesn't flood her with compliments or prove himself with desperate effort. He teases, and that is what makes her body respond before her mind can catch up. Most men seek comfort. He creates tension, because deep inside every woman is a craving for the pull-push dance of anticipation. Not chaos, but controlled unpredictability, the kind that makes her breath hitch, the kind that makes her check her phone twice after he walks away. He gives her just enough, a smile that holds something back, a compliment laced with challenge, a touch, then absence. She doesn't get to own his attention. She has to earn the next moment. And that triggers the dopamine loop. Teasing is not humor. It's psychological seduction. It activates the same neurological circuits that fuel addiction. The uncertainty of what comes next. The thrill of not knowing. The ache of not being sure. He says, "Oh, so you think you're cute? I'm still deciding." He watches her reach for his hand, then pulls away, just for a second, long enough to make her doubt, long enough to make her want. She moves in. He leans closer. Then just before the kiss, he pauses, smiles, and says, "Not yet." That's not rejection. That's emotional voltage. Because when he teases her, he's not mocking her. He's building a rhythm. He's leading her through a sensual emotional roller coaster. Up, down, hover, crash, until her nervous system is entangled with his. Most men break this spell by over-validating, by trying too hard, by fearing discomfort. But the man who understands teasing, he understands this. A woman doesn't fall for certainty. She falls for energy that makes her feel alive. And teasing, true teasing, is controlled chaos, not disrespect, not confusion, but the kind of tension that says, "I see you, but you'll have to come closer to keep me." And once she starts wondering if he's serious, once she starts craving the release, he owns her attention, and attention is the first stage of obsession. Number 2, the man who can walk away and owns the game. He doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't orbit around her emotions like a boy trying to earn approval. He stands still, like a force of nature, because he knows what she doesn't want to admit. The man who is willing to walk away controls everything. Understand this. A woman does not crave what is always there. She doesn't dream about what is guaranteed. She doesn't fantasize about what is handed to her without resistance. She is drawn to what can be lost. Scarcity triggers value. Detachment triggers desire. Boundaries trigger obsession. And that's where most men collapse. They think availability is love. They think instant replies mean connection. They think submission will buy affection. But every time they lower their standards, shrink themselves, or cling too tightly, they vanish in her eyes. Because the second a man shows he fears losing her, she stops fearing losing him, and the game ends. But the man who walks away, he triggers terror in her nervous system. Not because he's cruel, but because his absence carries more weight than their entire interaction. He is the unknown, the mystery, the question mark that rewires her expectations. She texts, he delays. She flirts, he smiles, but doesn't follow. She tests, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't need to play hard to get. He simply is hard to get, because he knows his worth isn't up for negotiation. He understands the truth no one teaches. If she's not afraid to lose you, she will never truly respect you. And when she senses that, when her words can't control him, when her affection doesn't buy compliance, when her emotions don't rattle his peace, she shifts. Suddenly she leans in, she double texts, she replays every interaction in her mind, wondering what she did wrong. But she didn't do anything wrong. She just met a man who's immune to her approval, a man who doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't orbit. He walks away because he knows he can. And in doing so, he becomes the one thing she can't resist. A man she didn't get to control, a man she might never get to keep. Number 3, the man who can whisper dirty without saying a word. He doesn't talk about sex. He doesn't brag. He doesn't need to, because before a single word escapes his lips, her pulse already changes. Because his energy is laced with tension, controlled, focused, potent. He doesn't seduce with content. He seduces with command of atmosphere. Most men try to create attraction by forcing it. They say too much. They move too fast. They inject desire where it hasn't had time to breathe. But the man who truly knows, he understands the slow burn, the build-up, the unsaid. He holds eye contact a second too long. Not staring, not begging, just holding. Letting her feel the weight of his gaze as if it's touching her skin. He speaks low, not monotone, not robotic, but deliberate. Like every word has gravity. He pauses before he speaks, and in that pause her mind fills in the blanks, not with logic, with sensation. What am I going to do with you? Spoken slow, with no smile, and a silence that follows. That silence, it makes her nervous system contract and dilate at once. She doesn't know why, but she feels it, and that's the key. She feels it before she understands it, and by the time she understands it, it's too late. Because this man isn't turning her on with content, he's turning her on with contrast. Stillness while others rush, silence while others fill space, subtle gestures while others perform. He brushes her arm, barely, touches her hand, then pulls away, leans in like he might kiss her, then stops, not to confuse, to charge the air. Every withheld move becomes a weight on her desire. And the longer he holds back, the more she wants. Because tension, when mastered, becomes obsession. She starts asking herself, why is this hitting me so hard? Why do I feel this without anything happening? Why do I want him to touch me so badly it hurts? It's not the words, it's his control. The man who can hold the storm without releasing it, who can stand in the fire without reaching for relief, owns the room. Because once a woman starts wondering, she starts fantasizing. And once she starts fantasizing, he already lives in her head. Number 4, the man who makes her feel like a woman and can have her anytime he wants. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't try to prove himself. He doesn't need to do, because his being is enough. Because when he's present, truly present, women feel something they didn't even realize they were starving for. They stop thinking, they stop analyzing, they stop controlling the moment, and they start feeling, not because of what he says, not because of what he wears, but because of what he awakens inside them. The world has taught women to armor up, to perform, to plan, to protect. But when they stand in front of this man, something ancient switches back on, the part of her that wants to surrender, without fear, without shame, without resistance. Why? Because he carries a quiet, grounded dominance that doesn't need to be loud. It resonates. It wraps around her nervous system and tells her, you're safe to feel now. You're allowed to soften. And when that switch flips, she doesn't just like him. She wants to be consumed by him. Here's how it works. His eye contact, not invasive, but unwavering. A stare that makes her forget what she was saying, because it's not just looking, it's claiming without touching. His voice, low, certain, unrushed, each syllable anchored in his chest, not thrown into the air to seek approval. His stillness, while others twitch, fidget, overshare. He holds silence like a blade, and in that silence she leans in. His touch, not groping, not hesitant, but deliberate. The brush of fingers on her lower back, the guiding hand through a crowded space, the light contact that says, "I'm not asking for permission. I already know where you belong." This kind of man doesn't perform attraction. He creates gravitational pull, because when she feels that kind of presence, the part of her that craves to feel feminine, to surrender, to dissolve, rises up. And here's what most men miss. Women don't fantasize about perfect looks. They fantasize about how a man makes them feel. And when a man's energy collapses her mental guardrails, when his presence makes her feel safe enough to let go of control, she doesn't just want him, she needs him, not out of logic, out of identity alignment. Because now in his presence, she's not performing, she's not guarding, she's not wondering what to say. She's just being the most feminine version of herself, and that experience is intoxicating, addictive, unforgettable. This is why the man who owns this polarity doesn't need to chase, doesn't need to try. He becomes a magnet, a mirror, a storm she wants to be caught in. And when that happens, he can have her, anytime, anywhere, without ever needing to ask. Now you felt it, the pressure, the shift, the pull, that thing you couldn't name, but now can't ignore. She doesn't respond to effort. She responds to presence. She doesn't chase words. She chases the feeling you imprint without speaking. And once you embody this, you'll never need to chase again. You don't need to convince. You don't need to prove. You simply need to remember. When you carry power without performance, she leans in without resistance. You've seen the truth. You felt it in your gut. And once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. Return. Watch again. Rebuild your perception. Subscribe to the Stoic architect, because this wasn't content, this was a spell. And what comes next doesn't ask for attention. It demands surrender, and it's already begun.